HRT is quite complex. There's a lot of things you cover. The pace at which you're going was a bit too slow. It's really difficult to cover everything within that pace. You spent at least 8 minutes to do the data gathering. There was a bit of repetition in there. So for example, you ask a patient whether they would like HRT. Remember in the beginning, that's what the patient wanted.
I would wish to go on HRT, and my friend Claire, she swears by it.
You don't need to clarify this again because that's not a good use of your time to ask a question just to clarify, unless you're not sure. And then there were some cues that the patient dropped. So cues are like murmurs, they're subtle and soft. It can easily be missed. So you have to pick up on these cues. So for example, work was a big cue here. She mentioned work a few times and then eventually you ask her what was her concern.
Well, what worries me the most is that it's happening when I'm working and when I'm teaching class and then I have my hot flashes. I just find it that I am not as much in control in front of the students, so that makes me feel a bit awkward. I think that is my biggest concern here.
Make sure that your history is more targeted and increase your pace. That will help you get more time. Then when it comes to the management, you'll have more time to go over that with the patient. Now, when it comes to discussion about HRT, if you just say HRT, do you think the examiner would know what HRT you're going to prescribe and whether you're doing it safely? So it's very important to verbalize the name of the HRT. So, for example, if you're going for a patch, specify the name that you're going to use. Otherwise, it's very vague, and that's where you don't get good marks in the clinical management.
On one hand, it was very good that you gave her so much space at the beginning to talk to. At the same time, I also felt like she really didn't know where to go with the question. So maybe, she needed a little bit more direction because you were asking, oh, is there anything else? And she was saying like, oh, anything else, but in what sense, And so maybe just to, especially if you see the patient who is like thinking, oh, what should I talk about? Maybe to give them, some suggestions of areas. Oh, maybe tell me about that aspect or this aspect regarding, what you wanted to know, but which you didn't later on. And I think it was also very nice because she was feeling a bit awkward to talk about sex. So I think it was also nice that you were quite gentle with it and sort of left it towards the end when you already built some rapport, and you did explain to her everything, and she felt like she was being heard.
What's very important here is you're careful about the choice of word. I would probably not say abuse to a patient because it can be triggering. More subtle way of asking whether she's been forced. And when we think about abuse, there's various types of abuse like emotional, sexual, physical. Have you felt like you've had to be doing things you don't want to be? So I would be asking a little bit more targeted question to check what type of abuse, but I would not say abuse necessarily. That way, the patient would not feel like they're being stigmatized. Also, I think with respect to the husband here, there was other issues in the family. So the husband was drinking a lot. So you should have inquired a little bit more about what's been going on. And usually with alcohol in a household where there's somebody who's dependent, it's very chaotic. Could have explained in a way that the social services, like a safeguarding team, could put some support in place to help your family. And right now it seems like you're struggling a lot. So that way you would be personalizing the management better. Okay. Maybe to get a bit more rapport, try and be more curious about. So, what's the name of your son? How's he doing? A little bit more, Probably I would not medicalize this treatment in terms of giving sertraline here because the actual problem is more there is an issue in the family that's causing this.
This is a tough one because she doesn't purposely want to talk about her husband having been violent in the past. And I think I gave some small cues at the beginning, and you did sort of pick up on this more towards the end when you mentioned, him being aggressive. I think we very nicely showed empathy and concern. So she felt like she could, talk a little bit more about what was actually going on at home. So I think maybe you could have asked a bit more of direct questions because she was scared to say it out loud herself that, is he being aggressive? Is he being like violent towards you? I might just as well say that he was in the past. But no, I think what's very important is to make sure that the patient trusts you. And I feel like because of the empathy you've been showing, she could have then, she did open up towards the end.
I'm Dr Reddy, and I'm a GPST 3 in the Northwest area. And so in terms of my journey, I did the AKT in the April of last year. I was kind of planning to do the SCA in September. That was my initial planning. Started looking at what to do, and so I looked at the website, the LCGB website, and I felt a bit lost. And it wasn't that there was already a few sittings had already taken place, so there was other trainees that had already done this, and I was expecting a bit more in terms of guidance, and I still felt like I was one of the first few, even though I wasn't at that point, because obviously this was just in May when I got the results. So I was like looking for various different resources out there, and I didn't know whether to go back and use the books like the Emily Bark book and just use that to which I know has been tried and tested and has worked for others. So I kind of was a bit haphazard in some ways, and then I'd come across yourself and a few other different resources, and it's actually some of the videos that you've released in the past have actually drawn me in, and it was some of the explanations that others have said, this is what's worked for me, and those that sometimes have failed the exam beforehand, where I wasn't in that position, thankfully. So when I was looking at the website and what resources were available, I chose to go to do the one-to-one. I mean, I did deliberate over it, don't get me wrong, like most trainees, and with the cost of living at the moment, it is quite an expense. And for me, the deciding factor was that I hesitated, but I was like, no, this is an investment in me, and I deserve this investment. And I didn't want to sit the exam the second time round, and I was prepared to put the money first and say, no, I'm going to do this, and I'm doing this for me, because if I fail and have to do the exam, then it's another expense. I'd rather spend it now up front, knowing that I don't have to do the exam another time. So just for those that are probably deliberating over it, by all means do that. Make sure the sums add up for you, but it's definitely worth thinking about and investing in yourself.